Tad, welcome to the John Frederick Show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on.
Well, we're excited to have you on because we want to talk about the new article that you did several days ago that appeared in The Hill. It's called On to the Next Manufactured Fiscal Crisis. Now we've got the Democrats in Congress trying to create taxes for another $1 trillion so they can spend that. What is going on here?
Well, what's going on is that you have one party that wants to tax and spend, and the other party that wants to borrow and spend. And we've been bouncing around on these what I refer to as manufactured fiscal crises because every single time they can't get something done, they come up with a mechanism to kick the can down the road, and what happens, and they have to create further mechanisms to kick the can down the road. So we're on now to our second fight over the debt ceiling. If you recall from the first one, that the GOP didn't really get anything out of it. They took a hostage that they weren't prepared to shoot, and as part of that deal, we just had a fiscal cliff, and we just solved the fiscal cliff by raising taxes and increasing spending. And so now we're coming up in the debt ceiling again, and Speaker Boehner insists that they're going to get cuts to match whatever they increase the debt ceiling. Well, they already made that bogus claim the last time around, and so there's no reason to believe that the GOP is going to get much out of this showdown either.
They're not, and we all could write the script, and it's kind of getting old, and after a while you see the same thing, Ted, over and over. And although everybody is concerned now with what's actually happening to the country, the play acting is just becoming very tiresome. In the final hour, some grand deal is going to be cut at the end, and this particular time we had that pillar of conservative intellectual thought, Mitch McConnell, going around as some kind of a cross between the Pied Piper and Johnny Appleseed. So it'll be something else. But at the end of the day, we're not solving the issue. That's, I think, the point of your article. I did a column about a week ago. The title of it was, "We're All Democrats Now." Because, as you said, when you came on, one group says spend, borrow. The other says spend, tax. Nobody says stop spending.
Yeah, and you have to give the Democrats at least credit for being pretty consistent on their message. We want to spend more money, and we want to increase taxes to pay for it. They kind of give you what they say they're going to give you. With the Republicans, it's going on decades now of saying they want smaller government, of promising to cut government. Yet, if you just go back less than 10 years ago when the GOP controlled the White House and both chambers in Congress, what happened? Spending went through the roof. And,
exactly.
And on all areas of government that President Obama has since further increased spending on, whether it's education or the prescription drug, you can go on and on.
I think this also stems to the presidential campaign in the fall, where the majority of the audience that we has knows I was not a Mitt Romney fan from day one, but I thought one of the biggest catastrophes of that campaign is you never got a single specific spending cut from the Massachusetts governor on anything. And so I think it just continues on.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, you had a couple. There was NEA funding, National Endowment for the Arts, PBS, where he had to apologize. And this is the thing.
He had to apologize to Big Bird.
Yeah, and you're right, John. Effectively, he offered no specifics, and the specifics that he did offer were so trivial, and then he had the nerve to apologize for it. He actually said that these are worthy programs, we just can't afford it anymore. And that's joke. Not, I wrote at the time, I said that this is about the worst argument you can make to cut federal spending is what Mitt Romney just did.
And Ted, one of the things that stands out in your article is the phrase, and I love this, game of fiscal brinksmanship. Now, short of a supermajority in both houses of Congress, is there any way to stop this endless game of what I call congressional chicken? Is there a way to legislate procedures that puts an end to this nonsense?
No, because you had the fox guarding the hen house. And if you go back, people talk about caps and things like that. Well, we got caps on spending with the last avoiding the debt ceiling. And what these are is they're promises over the next 10 years that Congress won't do something. And in this case, it won't overspend. Well, history being a guide, these caps have never been effective because Congress will always find an excuse. And we're seeing it right now with the cleanup efforts for Hurricane Sandy. They've just found an excuse to breach the cap. So it'll be natural disasters, it'll be new wars, another economic downturn. The problem is people focus on the size of government, and that's important. But it's the scope of government is what drives the size of government. And by scope, I'm talking about all the things that the federal government does and can do. And so long as the federal government can spend money on virtually anything it wants, it's hard, if not impossible, to keep it constrained.
So even if spending cuts were put on the table first, we're still looking at a continual bouncing, as you say, from sensationalized fiscal crisis to another sensationalized fiscal crisis. It's almost like a congressional house of horrors up there, isn't it?
We're still not having the fundamental debate about the role of government. We're not having it. And even a year and a half ago, when they got some reductions to avoid shutting down the government, I know it's hard to keep track of all these, but I pointed out that a similar deal that Newt Gingrich struck, it was the same programs being cut, but not eliminated, cut, and here we were 15 years later with these programs being cut again and celebrating it. But the point being is, just because you cut it, ultimately they grew back. And so you have to terminate, you have to eliminate programs. Neither party, and obviously the Democrats aren't, but the Republicans aren't proposing it either. And part of the reasons why they're not proposing is because they can't make the case to get rid of it because they've been supporting this stuff themselves.
Yeah, they're absolutely stuck with that. And I think, Tad, you nailed it. I mean, the saying that they cut something is ridiculous because they just cut the percentage of spending, it goes up, and then it grows back anyway. All these government programs they can't cut, they grow back like James Arness in The Thing. I mean, you can't get rid of these things. And, it harkens back to 1968. George Wallace, Alabama governor, ran for president. His mantra as a independent was that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two major parties in the United States at that time, Richard Nixon and Senator Humphrey. Hey, that was in 1968. Not much has changed.
No, I think there's differences on the margins, but as I conclude with my piece, those people who have been arguing that the parties are two peas in the same pod have an increasingly strong case. And when I watch this last election and I look at the things that a lot of my Republican conservative family and friends would email me, and the Obama's a socialist and Obama's this, that, and the other thing, I'm like, well, he's really just doing more of what George Bush did.
Exactly.
But where were you then? Where was your Tea Party when you're expanding Medicare and further sending where were you when Bush did TARP? You could go on and on and on. No Child Left Behind. Where were you? And now we have the dangerous socialist. Now we have the guy that's destroying the country. And these TV shows at night fuel this perception that there's this battle of good versus evil, depending on whether you're on the evil side or the good side. And people are just missing the fundamental problem, and is that it's not a partisan issue, it's a bipartisan problem, but it's flaws inherent with a government that doesn't have any constraints any longer.
And Tad, quite honestly, repeating the same talking points as if they're gospel night after night and show after show just doesn't get it done. And as you rightly point out in your terrific article, by the way, When the Republicans controlled Congress and the White House in the early 2000s, federal spending went through the roof.
I mean, that's really an incredible statement when you think about it. Entitlement went through the roof, bureaucracy grew, government grew, everything grew. So that's it. I mean, it's tough to find the argument. You know, the other thing, Ted, we got about a minute, Steve, a minute and a half that I want to touch on that really frustrated me is you look at the re-election of Speaker Boehner the other day in the Republican conference, and now you get this news reports dribbling out that actually he had about a 3-vote margin, and this thing was very close, and there were conservatives that really wanted to stand for something. But at the end of the day, Ted, no Republican stood up there and said, vote for me, I'm challenging the speaker because I want to change something. Not one of them stood up for that. So it was a kind of a covert, under the covers, we're not going to vote for the speaker, but nobody else will come out. There was no Tom Price in Georgia. There was no Host Camp. There was nobody who came up and said, we have to stop this. I'm challenging him. And even if just to make the statement, but everybody afraid of the reprisals, so we don't get anything done.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And no, you do need somebody who can step up, but who can articulate the message. And let's face it, specific spending cuts are not popular. You have to make the case that smaller government is good and explain it to people. You're putting people in charge of an operation that says it's for smaller government, but consistently votes for bigger government, supports bigger government, and we wonder why the American people won't go along with it. You have the wrong salesman. So, yeah, somebody else needs to step up to the plate, if possible.
The article is called On to the Next Manufactured Fiscal Crisis. It's available not only on cato.org, but in The Hill from the January 4th edition. Ted DeHaven, I can't thank you enough for being on with us this morning. We appreciate the time and the insight.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it myself.